Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Raise Capital Legally podcast and YouTube channel, where we talk about topics of interest to real estate syndicators and fund managers with an opportunity for live questions and answers before we sign off. I'm Krisha Young, your co-host, business development director, and client success coach for the firm. And this is attorney Kim Lisa Taylor, the founder of syndicationattorneys.com. And before we get started, please note that audio and video from this event will be posted on our podcast platform, YouTube channel, website, and social media, and will be made available to the public. You can go ahead and ask questions by hitting the Q&A button or in the chat at the end of this broadcast. Please note that information discussed during this event is of a general educational nature and should not be construed as legal advice. Hello, welcome everybody. Please welcome attorney Kim Lisa Taylor and co-host Krisha Young as we interview Adrian Fajardo from Cashflow Portal. In this episode, we explore the evolving landscape of capital raising in the commercial real estate industry. Is traditional syndication still a viable method, or are investors gravitating towards new strategies? We're going to be discussing emerging trends, innovative funding approaches, and the role of technology in reshaping how deals are structured. So whether you're a seasoned investor or just curious about the state of real estate investing, this episode offers valuable insights and actionable takeaways. Hello, everyone. Hi, Adrian.
Hello, nice thing.
Before we get going here, I just want to point out, I think you missed the topic, Krisha. The topic is, I think, like super interesting, because when I was pre-interviewing Adrian for this podcast, he said, is syndication dead? And oh my God, we have to use that as a topic.
My bad.
That is a topic. Is syndication dead? And we're going to talk about trends in capital raising for commercial real estate. So Adrian is our resident expert. He gets exposed to a lot of deals through Cashflow Portal and all the exciting and different asset classes that people are investing in. He gets to see them as well as we do. And so we wanted to get his perspective on it. So Adrian, hi, thanks for coming.
Yeah, Krisha, Kim, thank you for having me. And yeah, this is going to be an interesting call because, I mean, if we look at the trend, I mean, we're going to talk about here later in the call. Really, our clients are it's just like a path. It's either they go to Kim first and then myself or myself and they go to Kim. So anyone that uses Kim or us may have even gone through both of or spoken to Kim and myself at some point in time. So the topic is really in conjunction there because we've seen where else are people going, how are they allocating capital. So very excited, and thank you again for having me.
Yeah, we're super excited. And we see Adrian at a lot of the events that we sponsor. Cashflow Portal is, kind of travels in the same circles that we do. Our next event that I'm assuming you guys are going to be going to Best Ever Conference in March in Salt Lake City.
Salt Lake, yes.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely that's a great event. We love that one. We get a lot of traction from that event every year. We learn a ton of stuff and we get to meet really cool people. Adrian, we get to see our friends. So yes, we're excited about that as well. So all right, so tell us about Cashflow Portal and your role and how you got here.
Yeah, so my name is Adrian Fajardo. I'm the senior account executive for Cashflow Portal. What I really do for the company is sales and marketing. And as you mentioned, Kim, I do attend a lot of the events. Perry Zhang, who is the CEO and founder of Cashflow Portal, he is now focusing on running the company. So most of the time, I do attend all these conferences, and that's why Kim and I ran into each other in a lot of these events, and we ran into the same circles. So outside of speaking and connecting with the people in the space, I do a lot of the onboarding and continuous support with our users. For Cashflow Portal, we are a capital management software. So currently we now manage about 10 billion of equity from across multiple asset classes, and we've been around for about 4 years now. We came out of Y Combinator, which is a Silicon Valley incubation program out of in San Francisco, and then we're doing pretty well. We've incorporated more and more products because we understand that in the life cycle of an investor or a user, tech is just getting more and more involved into their either in their business life cycle or in their day-to-day taskings. And I think the trend is even going to be more involved. It's not going the opposite direction where it's going to be less involved. So because Perry, he used to work at Lyft, and he's very involved. He was a software engineer, so we understand the importance of always evolving. The product is never the final product. We always say it's the minimum viable product for today, and we're always adding to it, seeing as the market changes or shifts.
Interesting. Yeah, a lot of the same philosophies that we have. First of all, Krisha is our business development director, so she has a lot of the same role that you have within our company. And we too are constantly evolving our documents. People will ask us, we've tried to templatize our documents. It's very difficult because every time we do, we make a change and then more changes and more changes. And it's always in relation to what people are asking for or what has happened in a specific deal and how can we make this work better next time. So I think you guys have created a lot of unique features based on feedback from your users. And, I feel like we try to listen to our clients in the same way. And I think that's, what makes us like you guys so much is we know that you're so responsive, and we get tons of good feedback from the people that we refer over all the time. So, all right. So why did you say this? Why did you say, is syndication dead? Tell me what you're thinking about that.
Yeah. And if everyone just takes a step back, and syndication is popularly associated with multifamily, right? And then by that, I didn't mean that investing in multifamily is dead. We'll definitely cover that topic, but the method, it's really just a method of pulling in resources together, right? And I'm not going to jump into the legal aspects of it, but it really is just a pooling of resources. Now, because of the growth of popularity, and obviously there's just limited amount of resources, the competition has gone so high, and obviously for those to get a competitive edge, they have to figure out where they have to zag when everyone's zigging. And because now the information of, oh wait, we can just form a group and take down a multifamily together, that message has gone to mainstream, so everyone is doing it. Those people who've been doing it, while it was still the best kept secret, these larger firms, they say like, okay, now not only we have to compete with institutional, we have to compete with these emerging operators. What are other methods that we can use to raise capital? And then you can speak to the all sorts of different kinds of funds, debt funds, kinds of relationships. Those sort of things are now the emerging. And in this space, it's very relationship based. So you can't really, if you do a lot of transactions, people are bound to hear what you're doing. And now that messaging is also now trickled down to, again, starting to go to the mainstream. But there's still quite a few people still using a syndication. So what I meant by that is it's not as popular as it seems, because again, it's a method, but because the method has gone more competitive, people are now shifting to different ways to accomplish to the same end.
Yeah, and we're seeing that too. We've evolved into some different offering types over the years. So there's, your traditional syndication model, which is, we create a specific company that's going to buy one thing and sell off interest to investors. And we usually create a separate asset management entity. That's your typical, syndication model. You're going to create two companies within the syndication itself. You're going to have maybe a couple classes of members. Some are investors, some are the management team. And so that was traditional, and we certainly done a zillion of those. Well, maybe not a zillion, but
figuratively speaking.
Client here, I don't want to say something. But and then there's also the blind pool fund, which is more like we just create a pooled entity. It's still the same structure as syndicate. It's going to have an asset management entity, and it's going to have some classes of members. And then, but underneath that, you're going to have separate title holding entities that are owned, they own the property, and those are owned by the fund. So it's really just more than one. It's like a syndicate with multiple properties, really.
Yeah.
and maybe you know, an open-ended or a higher dollar amount that you're going to raise. And the distinction too is that with a syndicate, you have a business model for that specific property. You know what you're buying, how much money you need, what you're going to do with it. You've seen the financials, you have all that certainty. Whereas with a blind pool fund, you have a business plan. Hey, these are the kinds of properties and geographic areas we're going to look at, and these are the size, and you know, as long as they meet our criteria, then we're going to go ahead and buy them. So it's a little, it's more challenging to raise the money. So what's been evolving are these kind of hybrids,
Yes.
that we've seen. And so we've responded to that market also. We have something we call a series flex fund that is very popular with our clients, where we're doing series LLCs, and then we're creating separate series for each investment. It makes the whole process faster and cheaper. You know, their first deal, you've got to set up some master docs. Subsequent deals, we're setting up shorter docs that just complement the master docs versus trying to create over and over and over again. We have a flex class fund where instead of creating series, maybe you're just going to create a new class of investors for each deal. That can work also. So, you know, we've seen that. And of course, we, there's people out there doing the fund of funds, right?
Fund of funds, yeah.
Model. That one, you have to proceed with a lot of caution there. And I know a lot of people are doing it and want to be able to do it. And the reason I say proceed with caution is because it does open up some other regulatory requirements that you have to comply with, and sometimes they can be fairly burdensome. So we actually even brought in an attorney who that's specialty is, setting up investment advisories or broker dealers, people, or advising on compliance and how you do that if you're going to go down that route. And it turns out you have to do, some kind of compliance as an investment advisor. So, those are all things that we help with. So anything else you're seeing that's different beyond that?
And you're referring to just methods for capital raising, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
And I actually, it's along this point. And back to the first question, you mean when we talk about syndication is dead, it is also, people forget that it is just a tool or a method. And you and I, when we get or initially get clients, we operate in such a advisory role. We don't necessarily, I mean, you don't necessarily just make the documents, right? Like for us, we don't just create the deal. We vet them. We ask them, what are you trying to accomplish? What is this for? And then that paints us a picture on how we can structure their offering in the portal. Now, I sorry, this is going to be a broad topic, but social media has affected ways of people. Finances is one, where market trends and where capital is moving, but we can't underestimate the power of social media and how it also influences people's decision making. Because I brought that up is because I've also run across people who are using the method not because what it's intended to do, again, remember it's a tool, but because they saw the popularity or somebody else was doing it, or I'm not going to name, but a mentorship was doing it and they're part of that, so now they're doing it. But at the end of the day, they're not familiar of what is the best way to use the tool. So they, the analogy of like when you're a hammer, everything else is a nail. So they use that tool to do everything, but not knowing that there's actually a better method where maybe a typical syndication is still better, but because they heard of this new great thing, now they just want to implement it and start using it without getting really the gist if that is right for their business plan or their investor life cycle. So to answer your question, that is the more popular ones that I've seen. The asset type does change, but the method is fairly familiar. It's either, fund of funds, syndication. We don't get a lot of joint ventures because it's fewer people involved. But those are the blind funds, the fund of funds, the series, and I think that's the other thing called customizable. I think that's the analogous term for it. But yes, the method is similar, but the assets change.
Right. I agree with all of that. Is that when we're interviewing people who come to us for the first time, I always try to find out what is it, what's your ultimate goal, not what's this goal. What do you want? Is this the only one you want to do? To how many do you want to do this year? How many you want to, what's your ultimate goal? Where do you see yourself going? Because then we can position them in a way that, you're not pigeonholed into this one thing. If you only think you're going to do 1 or 2 things a year, then maybe syndication is the right model for you. And depending on the size of the deal, that may be what the market expects.
Yes.
If you're buying a, $30 or $50 million property, you may be just kind of stuck in that, not stuck in it, but that may be the best option for you simply because that's what your investors are going to expect and be looking for. And trying to give you some flexibility if you need to bring in some private equity or a co-investor or something like that as well. But syndication, like you said, it's a tool. It's one tool, and we have a whole suite of products.
Yes.
And they all start with the basic foundation. They all kind of look the same, and then there's variations on top of that. And so what we're talking about right now is structure. And, the other aspect, of course, of syndication is compliance with securities laws, which is really kind of outside the scope of what we wanted to discuss here. But that's certainly something that a new operator or somebody who's just new to capital raising business, you have to know both. You know how to legally raise the money. You also have to know how to structure the deal with investors and what to offer investors and what kind of method you're going to use to be able to do it. And that's where I think Cashflow Portal is so critical, because you've seen all, you can help with the systems and the methodology that make it look like, I'm not a guy in my basement with a spreadsheet. Which is how a lot of people started. I have this software. I look professional. My investors can log in. They can see what they've invested in. They can see how much money they've made this year, and and all of that. So I think these platforms have just really transformed the industry and made it come into the professional realm. And that's
and to add to that, we have to. We can't forget the human element, right? In the end of the day, there is a person who's writing that check, and that person have family, have ambition, have goals, have fears. What technology really did is account for that. I know it's weird because it's ones and zeros and it's a screen, but if I was an investor or a general partner and I'm raising capital for a project, whatever it may be. And yes, if I approach it like, hey, here's a PDF document, I'll keep track. Can you text me your social security and bank information? I'll put it on my spreadsheet. That increases anxiety or fear from the recipient, right?
Yeah.
But what technology did is it gives the person a peace of mind. So if you say, here's a link, a secure link, you have your own password, everything's encrypted, so on and so forth, right? And we streamline the process or narrow down the steps that the person would take to actually be part of that investment, from possibly hours to under 5 minutes if they have all the information. So we take into account the human element that who's investing the deal. Obviously not disregarding the legalities involved as well. So we're checking all those boxes. But in the end of the day, the person who's raising capital needs efficiency, and they also have limited time in the day to operate. So they need to raise the capital and run their business. And also the person who's doing the investment, how can I make it easier for them to lessen the tension, to minimize that fear? How do I promote transparency? How do I give them enough information in an easier, that's key, in an easy way to read the information for them to make an educated decision? And technology just sped that up in the investment space.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it increases investor confidence.
Yes.
Because you are, again, they're not sending you their information and wondering how you're going to safeguard it. They know that you're using a professional company that has systems in place to be able to do that. In fact, we had a horror story with, somebody who posted their own offering on their own website, and someone else cloned the website and cloned documents and started trying to get investors to send their money, somewhere overseas, and an investor did.
Wow.
So that becomes irrecoverable. You know, you don't want that to happen to you. So that's why I always say, don't do it on your own. If you're going to have that link on your website, you can talk about your offering, but you want a link to go to the portal where it's going to be safeguarded and where all of your documents are housed, where nobody can just look at them without having at least signed up and gotten an account. And, you know, hopefully there's a way that, you know, they can be kind of verified. And because
Yeah.
most people that are just, you know, are opportunists, they're not going to do something like that if they're just trying to look for a way just to get something they can scam on.
Yeah, yeah. And I get to the point earlier, this space has just grown in more popularity. And those people who are nefarious are saying like, wait, what? People are writing more than $100,000 checks on these things. How can I manipulate this or, scheme away from this? So again, it's a double-edged sword of syndication getting in the mainstream. Security is now one is the legal aspect, and how do you secure the entire process. That's now should be a top of mind for the operators when they look forward into conducting their business.
Well, and they don't want to, they have to be careful about even, you know, things like where are you going to house those subscription agreements that come to you that
Yeah.
have sensitive information on it?
Yes.
Because if you're just putting them, you know, maybe on your desktop, that's okay, unless somebody steals your computer. And then, you know, if you're putting them on some kind of an online platform, it really needs to be secure.
Yes.
And you shouldn't be the one who's trying to have to safeguard that if there's another way and there's people with better expertise at it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. So tell me about some of the different asset classes that you're seeing people invest in through your portal.
Um, yeah, the ones that really has grown more popular. So I saw the transition from multifamily. Seems like development is now starting to grow more and more popular. Another one is the flex use buildings. You know, and yeah, it sort of makes sense, right? I've seen more and more projects for flex use building commercial buildings, because we're in this transition. 4 years later after that shutdown, we still haven't changed our lifestyle, and I think companies are realizing, how vast AI can really grow to it takes over some people's jobs, right? Like how much manpower do I still need the same uh, personnel to run the same business, or can I have technology take over some? So they can't foresee how much space can they get or lease up and be in a contract for, when later technology will just shrink down their workforce. So I get the need for it. I see it. We are in this odd transitioning period, and these developers are creating solutions to what they think is a viable solution for where we're going. So I mean, multifamily by far is still more popular. It's as I mentioned earlier, the method is changing, but seem multifamily is still the most popular product.
Tell us,
Now, few
what is a flex use building? There's going to be some people that have never heard that term before.
Yeah, so it's a building where the spaces can be used not just for like for office. I've seen people maybe use it for maybe a coffee shop or something. Depending on who is renting the space, it's flexible enough where it can cater to almost any industry. Um, Now I've seen it where maybe the what do you call it, the commercial layer or the floor is not residential, but they do have layers above it. Maybe the 18th floor or something like that, if it's that high, would have residential spaces. But almost everything you need can be in a building. So you can have restaurants, you can have the office, you can have parking lots, uh, and then it's not set in stone, so that space can be changed if the lease is up. But the way it's structured, because how places buildings in New York, a lot of them are vacant because it was really built for office. And
Right.
that's where people are feeling like, hey, if we build something that's only catering to one type of asset type, they realize the risk for doing that. So now they're trying to hedge the risk by creating something that can be changed depending on who's ever the tenant.
Mhm.
So we see, of course, we help people with multitudes of asset classes over the years, but one of the more popular trends that we're starting to see are kind of the somebody who built a really big warehouse building, and part of
Mm,
it will be used for self-storage, part of it will be used for like mini warehouse space for
mm,
who are selling on eBay or Amazon or something like that, where they've got a
yeah.
place to store and ship things from. And then, if they can get enough big enough tenant, then they'll take on a piece of that space as well. So they really kind of have movable walls.
Yeah.
And along with some outside storage spaces that perhaps if the need is there, could be later converted into indoor spaces.
Yep.
So we're seeing a lot of flex storage. Um, self-storage, still important. I think, there's always, mobile home parks, RV parks,
Mm.
still viable, still big. Um,
What about assisted living?
assisted living, yes. We're seeing people who are doing assisted living both on kind of a commercial scale and others who are doing it more on a residential scale, where they'll buy and convert a building and,
Yeah.
take it from a 6-bedroom house to 12-bed facility. We're seeing a lot
The
of.
one I'm seeing that wasn't present, or at least in the platform space, is oil and gas or minerals.
Right.
That one now is grown popularity. We've grown more clients just like out of nowhere. We have like 3, 4 clients doing oil and gas. So that is also an I guess an industry or an asset type that has gone more popular. I think I was at what's Ken McElroy's event, Fixated Limitless.
Yeah.
So we go to his event every year. I think 1 or 2 years ago, I did not see a booth about it. Just last year, I see about 4 booths just for
Yeah.
oil and gas. So it is grown in popularity.
They were big on the alternative asset classes there.
Mhm.
Mm.
And
Yes.
we're going to that one this year, right, Krisha?
Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
yeah. We're sponsoring
Mm,
that one this year. Yeah.
mm.
Krisha has kind of scouted out for us last year. She was our spy. Our event spy.
It was a great event. Lots of
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So that's good to know, and I could see why with the current administration, they're certainly more favorable to that. I can see where that's going to become more important,
Even more. Yep.
a bigger space. So what kind of other asset classes, Krisha, are you seeing? We've got a ton of them.
It mostly development. We've covered them, like mostly development. Oh, well, we have one client that was looking at food hall.
Okay.
There was a food hall there, and but development, mostly multifamily still, assisted living, and that's mostly what I've seen
Yeah.
lately.
Student housing is one, single
Yeah.
tenant, retail, the co-warehousing space,
Airbnbs, like vacation rentals.
Yeah. I
they're
was
very.
gonna say it's the basic one, but it's gone back into more popular. It's single family homes. Either you're buying it in mass or a portfolio, or maybe a very expensive one. I've seen people raising capital for, a single family home.
Mhm. So we had, hotels. We have a lot of
Yeah,
hotel.
hotels too. Yes.
Right.
You mentioned the development space. We definitely are seeing a lot more people in the development space, and keep an eye for the audience. Do keep an eye. We are going to be interviewing Daniel Kleeman, DaniilKleyman, on his 5-step development process. So he's got a training program for that. And we'll be interviewing him in a few weeks on our podcast. And we have interviewed him before, so if you want to look in past podcasts. But yeah, I'm excited about that one myself, because he's really kind of teaching people. He's one of the few people that I've met who's actually teaching people how to do actual developments, which I think is a really useful skill that would serve everyone well who's going to be in this space for a long time.
Yeah. Definitely get a few developments for sure coming through. So I'm hearing we've got structure, what to offer investors, what method to do it, what we talked about at the beginning, right? compliance, right? That's kind of important. How to do it legally. The technology portals and the importance of technology portals is you're basically making it easy for your investors, and you're really increasing that know, like, and trust factor, because you've got this transparency there, and you're safeguarding the documents, you're safeguarding their information, right? So I can really see the benefit of using something like Cashflow Portal to house all of that. And then this discussion around the different asset classes, right? Like the thing that I love about this industry is that, and whenever I have conversations with people, it's like, what do you want to do? Like it's almost like nothing's impossible as long as we're doing it by the law, obviously, right? And it's going to make sense to your investors, and it's going to make sense from a business perspective. But let's look outside the box here. Let's look at different ways that we can make this happen for you, and I find that it's fun and it's exciting because you can like brainstorm and figure out, like, it doesn't have to be just this one way.
Yeah.
And the flexibility and adaptability is really like future focused, so you don't stagnate and just like, okay, well, that trend's gone, we're done.
Yeah.
A lot of people doing that in the last year, 2 years, where, the deals became scarce. The interest rates crept up, made the deals not somewhat viable. The sellers were kind of holding on to their pricing. They weren't really accommodating the fact that the interest rates had risen. And then you had a lot more people out in the space trying to enter into the multifamily world. So a lot of people just kind of stopped, they kind of got stuck in their tracks. And what we're trying to do is help everybody understand that, there's a whole world of real estate investing out there. Medical office buildings. We just recently interviewed a client who invests in dental office buildings.
Mm-hmm.
And uses this as a tool to actually increase the profitability of the dental practices that previously owned the building. So
Yeah.
it's just a really cool niches that people are coming up with. So trying to get everybody to think broadly. We actually are planning a virtual event, 2-day virtual event in June, which is kind of beyond multifamily. What, thinking beyond, expanding beyond multifamily, what other kinds of things. So we're going to be bringing in some speakers and trainers, and, Adrian, we hope you guys are going to be part of that too, where, we can just kind of expose you to all these different ideas and, get you thinking like real estate investors. When I first came into this space, I went to something called the Learning Annex, and it was all about
Learning Annex.
Learning Annex. It's not, I think it went defunct a long time ago, but I'm probably dating myself by anybody who remembers it. But it was at the LA Convention Center, you showed up and there were 60 different people with all these different asset classes that you could go in this room and learn about this. And that's how I met David Lindahl and Ari Mentor. Was just, walked into that room and listened to it. I'm still kind of pissed off. My husband would not let me buy the program on how to find these forgotten mansions. I really wanted that program. I'm still mad about it. How to find and rehab forgotten mansions. That's just crazy. But all right, well, back to what we were talking about. Let's, Krisha, can you just let people know how they can access our books or some of the resources we have?
Yes, absolutely. And we do have a couple questions here, so we'll get to those in a moment. But yes, we do have 2 books. We've got one beginner's guide and one more in-depth novel almost here, encyclopedia. Both are available on Amazon.com. If you search up Kim Lisa Taylor, you'll find those books. The larger one is also available on Audible, but you can also grab a copy for free if you text the word Syndicate, SYNDICATE, to our phone number at 844-796-3428. Again, that's texting the word Syndicate to 844-796-3428.
Yeah, and a lot of the things we've talked about today different deal structures, the different methods for raising capital, whether it's a blind pool fund or a syndicate, or something in between are discussed in this book. So it's a good desktop reference. Everybody should have it. And, I don't just say that, people say that to me. So I'm just sharing it with you.
We get tons of awesome feedback on our books. It's a great resource.
Just in case anybody does have to drop off early, can you give your contact information? Where would people go to learn more about Cashflow Portal, maybe see a demo? How can they access what you guys do?
Yeah, just head over to cashflowportal.com. Most of the things you need to see is in the page there, but on the upper right hand side, if you want to schedule a free no cost to you product tour, just click on the upper right hand button. And more often than not, I would be the one that you would speak to anyway. So yeah, that's also an easier way to reach out to me or get a hold of me.
You can also get to them directly from our website. So we have a link to them on our trusted vendor page. I'll put that link in the chat just in case anybody is on the call that can actually see that. And if you're not, just go to syndicationattorneys.com and then go to our trusted vendor page and look for Cashflow Portal, and there's a link to them there as well. All right, well, do we want to take some questions?
Yeah. Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So we have one from a little while ago from Corey. He was asking about special purpose vehicles. I don't remember what we were talking about at that time.
All right. So there's all this jargon, right, in the industry, and it all actually means
Interchangeable.
Things. So the single purpose vehicle, I mean, every time you create a syndicate, you're creating a single purpose vehicle. It is formed for the property or for the purpose of acquiring that single property. There are all variations of the things we were talking about with the series LLCs, with customizable funds, with the flex class funds that we have. In each of those cases, or even a blind pool fund, anytime you're dealing with multiple assets kind of under one umbrella of a securities offering, you're going to need to have a single title holding entity that just holds title to that one thing. And, whether that is just a, single member LLC that's owned by a fund, or is that the actual investment vehicle, the syndicate itself, really is inconsequential, but you have to have this one entity that only does this one thing in order to get a commercial loan. The lender will absolutely require that, because they're not going to loan to a fund that has 7 different properties and, they just own one portion of the assets of that fund. They're going to want to own that one specific thing that the fund happens to own. So SPV, single purpose vehicle, SPE, single purpose entity, title holding entity, all mean one thing. It's the entity that is buying the thing, whether you're buying real estate or you're maybe buying an investment in somebody else's, maybe you're buying a investor position in somebody else's deal. Now, you hear me stumbling there because I don't want to use the words GPLP. And the reason I don't want to use them is because they're completely legally and technically incorrect. All right. The only time those terms actually come into play is if you have a limited partnership, and that is the entity structure you've created, which was popular in the 70s and 80s, not so much now. Okay. If you have a limited partnership, then you will have a general partner that is the manager of that entity, and limited partners who are the investors. The structure that is used 98% of the time, at least from our clients, is an LLC. It has a similar structure, but the terminology is completely different. You have a manager who has the same position as a GP in a limited partnership. You have the manager of an LLC, and then you have the members of the LLC who are kind of in the same position as the limited partners. So you really just need to understand that the industry jargon doesn't necessarily match the legal terminology. And you have to be careful about it and maybe even qualify it when you're talking to sophisticated investors, because if you're using those terms GPLP and then you present them with an investment in an LLC, they're going to think maybe you don't know exactly what you're talking about.
Mhm.
So if you tell them, hey, I'm just using the common usage, I mean, even though I understand those aren't the right terms, we're going to be using an LLC that has manager instead, but common in the industry, we're just going to call it GPLP so everybody knows what we're talking about.
Yeah.
That's okay. But if you're not saying that and you're just, wandering around saying, hey, I'm a co-GP in a deal, maybe somebody's going to wonder if you really know what you're doing.
Yeah. And Corey, on the portal side, to your question about special purpose vehicles, the way we really work is if you're familiar with TurboTax, what we do is we have an HTML form. So what they see when they go to the offering link is a simplified version of all those legal documents. What we do on the back is we map the field to the field on the actual document. And what we actually do is when an investor or an operator would come to us and say, hey, we have a deal, our legal documents are ready, we would make 3 templates of that legal documents depending on the investor profile. So if they invest as an individual, a joint tenancy, an LLC, the fields would change. I mean, the mapped answer would go to a different portion to the actual document. So in the portal, what we're just asking is to the investor, what are you investing with? What investment entity are you going to invest with? And whatever they select, then we already ignore all the other questions that's not pertinent to that investment profile, and then we just map the answer. So in the very end, after they go through the funnel, before they sign, they can see the actual document that's answered correctly. So on the front end, what the investor will see is not really the technicalities of what are the legal documents on the back. However, in the offering link, we do have the ability for the operators to attach their legal documents, the PPMs, the operating agreements, so the investor can review them long before they even start the investment. But the investment process itself, that's why it can be streamlined and simplified, is because we help them narrow down which are the only fields that they need to answer. Yep. Good question.
Good.
See, this is why technology is so important.
Yeah.
Leverage it. So Tom J is asking for us to specify the platform. So we're talking specifically here with Cashflow Portal. And how is your company Cashflow using these tools and which tools?
Understood. Tom, it is similar. So we are Juniper Square. I wouldn't say we're a competitor because they're the grandfather of investor portal. They've been in this space for a very, very long time, and we're just an emerging. But pretty much what they do is what we do as well. So the reporting, tracking. Now associated tools. We can go to the specifics of, because Cashflow Portal, the main functionality is the investor portal. However, built in the portal, we have CRM, we have underwriting, and here in the future, what we're working on is including property management. So you can think now of Cashflow Portal as an all-in-one a place to conduct all your, not just even commercial real estate investment, because we are trying to venture. We're asset agnostic. We don't really know what you're raising capital for. The system is, you can think of Cashflow Portal as a super calculator. It is allocating or treating each dollar coming in and coming out. So it knows what's the share, what is the buckets, how many investors. That is what the portal does. So the tools inside the portal, covers a vast array of almost anything that you need to do in the space of capital management. So that hopefully that answers your question.
Well, and I'd like to add to that, that it really does help with the compliance, because if you're doing, so this isn't a crowdfunding platform, right? Where you're going to post your deal and they're going to go out and raise money for you. That's not what it's for. This is more of a keeping track system and an internal bookkeeping system for your offering.
Yes.
So that everything is there in one place, but it's also facilitating your communication with your investors.
Mm-hmm.
That, if you meet somebody, you're sending them to the portal, or they might go there if they land on your website and you talk about, hey, we've got this offering. If you're able to talk about it, if it's first of all, that's a compliance issue. Can you talk about it?
Yeah.
But But at the point that you are able to tell them about your deal, then you can say, hey, go here and to review the offering documents, to review the investment summary, to review the information, the marketing materials about this deal, so that you can decide whether or not you're going to invest. And then once they become an investor, it facilitates the way for you to send an email to all the investors in that deal. Or maybe you
Yeah.
get another deal and now you want to send an email to all of the prospective investors or all the investors in any of your deals to let them know you've got something new. So it's just giving you that ability to communicate. And I would imagine that you probably even have some ways that people could maybe send out a newsletter or something like that to the people in there.
Exactly. Yes, Kim. And again, we work in tandem with all of what we're doing is we have to backtrack again what is the legal way to to operate, right? So as Kim mentioned, in the 506B, you have to have a pre-existing substantive relationship. So once you have a website and you say, hey, here's my investor portal, or contact us, we have lead capture forms. Once your prospective investors do that, you create timestamps, you have digital footprints. So if, God forbid, you get audited, we do have proofs that, hey, you've initiated the communication with this investor at this time and date, right? They've logged in, they've created an account with you, and you've exchanged emails here and there, because our CRM can track, oh, they've opened an email, they've responded to an email, they've clicked the link. So those things are more proofs that you are, doing things in accordance to the law.
Yeah, and one of the things that's required in order to create that, let's just back up and give like a little, 5-minute
Deal.
securities primer, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the most exemptions that people are, if you're selling securities, which are interests in a company where people will be passively investing and relying on the management team to generate profits, you're selling something called an investment contract. Investment contracts are securities. Now that you know you're selling securities, you have to comply with securities laws. And that means you either have to register your offering, get it pre-approved by regulators. It's like taking your company public. It's a huge, long ordeal. You're not going to do that for a real estate deal. Instead, you're going to qualify for an exemption from regulation. And there are exemptions at the state level. If everything is in one state, you, the property, all of your investors are in one state, then you could comply with a state level exemption. There are 50 securities divisions, one for every state, and they have their own sets of rules. Most of their rules are similar to the federal rules. Most of our clients follow the federal rules because that allows you to raise money from people in any state. And so the federal rules that we're talking about are Reg D, Rule 506B, and Reg D, Rule 506C. So Reg D, Rule 506B allows you to raise money. There's no limits on the money you can raise under a Regulation D offering, 506B or C. But there are some limits on who can invest. So in a 506B offering, you don't have to count accredited investors, but you do have a limit on how many non-accredited investors, and they must also prove that they're sophisticated. So that's more than somebody with just savings and a job. They have to have had some training, some background, some educational experience, something that makes them able to understand the 150 pages of legal documents that they're going to have to look at before they invest in your offering. And they need to be able to understand the risks and make sure that it's appropriate for them in their investing portfolio. So 506B, you cannot offer that if you want to be able to include non-accredited investors, which all of our starting out clients always do. We always recommend you always start with 506B because most everybody knows people who are non-accredited who would be fine investors. And so somebody's thinking, what's accredited? Accredited is someone with over $1 million net worth, or they have over $200,000 a year income if they're single, $300,000 if they're a couple, or any entity where all the investors are accredited, or it has over $5 million in assets not formed for the purpose of investing with you. So, most people are using the individual, so that just think of it as a 1, 2, 3 rule. $1 million net worth or $200,000 income, $300,000 if they're a married couple. So If they're accredited, again, you don't have to count, but if you're doing a 506B offering, you can include people that don't meet that criteria. They don't have $1 million net worth. They don't make $300,000 a year, but maybe they have $500,000 net worth and they've got, $50,000 or $100,000 they'd like to invest. That's fine, as long as they can demonstrate that they're sophisticated and you're not able to find them through any means of general advertising or solicitation. That's kind of the hallmark of 506B. You can include non-accredited investors, but you can't find them through any means of general advertising or solicitation. And that means that you've already established a relationship with them prior to telling them about your investment opportunity. And the relationship begins when you have an understanding of whether they're accredited or if they're not accredited, how are they sophisticated, and you've had a suitability conversation with them to understand whether their investment criteria meets your offering. So once you've had that conversation, then you can go ahead and start offering them deals. So you have to be able to, the kind of the last part of that compliance is that you have to be able to demonstrate when that relationship began. You have to have a record keeping system, and that's something that you can do within Cashflow Portal, is that you can demonstrate, hey, I asked them these questions, I had this conversation, I now have pre-vetted them, I can offer them any deal. Just a little caveat here, SEC does not believe this can all happen electronically. There has to be a live conversation somewhere in the mix to establish that relationship. Doesn't have to be you personally, it could be your assistant, but somebody has to have a phone call or a Zoom call, or you have to meet them in person and have this conversation, and then you document the responses. From that point forward, you can offer them deals. Okay.
Kim, is that the investor questionnaire you're talking about?
So there used to be, an old investor questionnaire that everybody used and they thought it was enough. It's not.
Oh, really?
The SEC has said, no, it's not enough. You have to have a live conversation where somebody's actually talked.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So we've got an article on our website about how to establish a pre-existing relationship with an attached, a list of questions that you can use as an example. Once you've had the conversation, you can offer them any deal. Until then, if they're not accredited, you cannot. You can do a 506C offering that allows you to freely advertise, but then you're restricted to only allowing verified accredited investors in your offering. And that means they have to go through a verification process and provide you with a letter, so you have a reasonable assurance that they are accredited, and that's been verified within the 90 days prior to their investing with you. So that's another thing they can do through your platform also, isn't it, Adrian?
Yeah, they can. There's a workflow for the investor. Let's say at the point where they've started the investing process, and they don't happen to have an accreditation letter. We do have a workflow that's within the portal where they can get a letter. Post 2-3 days, they can have an accreditation letter. And then another is if they have their own CPA, because they can also create an accreditation letter on your behalf. You can also upload that in the letter. I mean, in the portal. Yes, correct.
Nice.
And that's what we do, is we'll give our clients, when we do 506C offerings for them, we'll give them that letter. They can have their CPA, attorney, investment advisor, somebody with a license who's familiar with their finances can vouch for them and
Yes.
sign. And if they don't have it, then there's third parties that will do it. And that's one of the ones they can go through and get that done. So with the 506B, though, they can self-certify. So they don't, because you already know them, you've already had this relationship with them, you've already had this conversation, they can just check the boxes. Yes, I meet this criteria. And you can take them at their word, as long as you know you don't have any information contrary. If you had actual knowledge that they were, saying something that was incorrect, then you would have to refuse them. But if you don't have to do further inquiry.
Yeah.
And just to tie a bow on this one, there's only 35 sophisticated investors allowed in a 506B offering, whereas it's unlimited accredited in both types of offerings, but you can't have anybody sophisticated in a 506C offering.
Who's not accredited.
It's not accredited.
According to the SEC, they all should be sophisticated, even if, but And some people might be saying, well, why don't I just do 506Cs? And here's why. Because until you establish a track record, you're going to be advertising to strangers. And the first thing they're going to ask you is, how many have you done before?
Yeah.
And so if you don't have an answer to that, then you have to build a team that has somebody with that kind of experience and be part of their team for a few deals before you're going to be able to go on and do your own and survive that question.
And on the portal side, most of the stronger operators or the established, with a great track record is performing, they rarely use 506C because they have very happy investors. So they don't need to advertise to new investors. They have more capital coming in than the deals that they need to find. So that's also I wouldn't say it's a negative or a question mark if investors are saying, if you're so good, why are you advertising your deal? There's a reason. Like, what if the deal is so big, or this is a larger deal than they usually take down? They now need to take more investors, and they've exhausted all their investor list. That's a reason. But more often than not, a 506B is still the preferred method for experienced operators.
Well, and that's true across the board. Even the SEC statistics, there's about 25,000 Form Ds filed with the SEC every year. That's the form that somebody files with the SEC when they are claiming one of these 506B or C exemptions. And out of the 25,000, approximately 90% are Reg D Rule 506B offerings. And, people come to us all the time and they're like, oh, mine's just a small offering. And, it doesn't qualify. And it's like, well, the SEC says the median raise is $2 million for all of these 25,000 offerings and with 14 investors. So kind of the general rule there is you need to have about 3 or 4 times that many people in your database that you've pre-vetted in order to fund that deal. So if you're trying to raise $2 million. So, your goal is to have not 1 or 2 people that you're talking to or 1 or 2 deals that you're looking at. The goal is to have 10 or 20 deals you're looking at every month. And you have 30 or 40 people in your database to start with your goal to get to 300 or 400.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. So yeah, I hope that's an eye opener for some people because we people that, agonize over deals and underwriting and they never make offers. And those aren't the people that actually get the deals done. The ones that just look at a lot of deals and spit out LOIs, those are the ones that actually get the deals.
There, like every conversation I have with people, one of my main questions is, tell me about your investor pool. And sometimes I get, well, I don't have anybody. And it's like, okay, well, that's what you need to focus on then. Like, you have to have investors, or else if you can go ahead and get the deal, but if you don't have the investors to invest in it, then you're going to lose out on it. Right. And we spend a lot of time educating our clients about this in our mastermind and in our articles and on this podcast, because it's so important. Without the investors, you don't have a deal.
Well, and that's a question for Cashflow Portal. There's a way. So if you don't have investors, then you've got to bring somebody in your management team that can bring the investors. And you cannot pay commissions. I just want to get that out there. There's a whole lot of people out there telling people they can earn commissions or they'll pay them 8% or 3% or whatever. Don't do that. And don't do it if you're the issuer. You're going to lose your exemption. You're going to be charged with selling securities through unlicensed brokers. If you're the person that's accepting that money, you're going to be charged with being an unlicensed broker. That could be a felony. You could be prohibited from ever raising money again. Don't do that. Okay. But you can co-GP. So you can get into somebody's asset management entity and become part of their deal and become actively involved in generating their profits. And so there's a way on Cashflow Portal, if you have multiple people in the management of the asset management entity, that they can separate their investors, right?
Yeah, that's a very, very important feature set that we have in the portal because, again, this is a team sport. Very rarely, I don't even think I've come across a user where he's the sole operator of the entire thing. But we take investor separation very seriously. So if you're a co-GP and you're partnering with the main operator, and you're doing all, like Kim says, you're doing other tasks than just capital raising. Your portal will actually look like your own. And this is key because in some I'm not going to name another company, but you're sharing a portal with the main operator. And that's scary because if I'm bringing my friends and family and they're writing me checks, what's protecting them from the main operator to reaching out to them on their future deals that I'm not being partnered with, right? So they're being flooded with future opportunities just bypassing me. In Cashflow Portal, each co-sponsor or co-GP coming into the to the deal, obviously the main sponsor will have to countersign and see the documents, but all their contact information is redacted, so they won't even know who the person. They will see the entity name, but they will not see the email and phone number. It is still their duties and responsibility to countersign and review their answers. However, for the investor going through the co-GP's portal, it will have your own branding, it will have your own company name. It's not even going to show the main sponsor. It would look like you are the main sponsor. So yeah, we
And
we take that separation.
we also have a non-disclosure, non-circumvent agreement, and I'm happy to provide it with anybody who wants to email us. If you want to email Krisha at syndicationattorneys.com or info@syndicationattorneys.com and say, hey, we need that non-disclosure agreement, I'm happy to share those. I'm even happy to share them with you, Adrian.
Mm.
Because they're hard to enforce, but it is a deterrent. And if you have that agreement with the main sponsor saying, hey, you know what, don't go harvest my investors.
Yes.
And I've heard of that happening where somebody's like, oh, well, we just didn't have a way to separate. Well, it's like, okay, either you're too disorganized or you're too dishonest. I'm never going to invest with you again. And why would I ever want to bring another investor to you? So you really have to have that agreement with them and have them have that understanding that you are agreeing to this and this is a legal document. And if you can't or aren't organized enough to be able to agree to this, I don't want to bring my investors to your deal.
Yeah. Uh,
So be careful of
the
them.
the default setting also of the portal is what we call an email intercept. So for example, what if the main GP plays the card where, oh, I just have a mass marketing email. I didn't know your LP was part of it. So in any deal, all the emails get stopped at the co-GP level where the co-GP can review the email, maybe even change, remove some information. Because again, there can be accidents where at the very end, like, hey, if you have any questions, contact me. And it's the email of the main GP instead of the co-GP's email. So all the investors of everyone in that deal will contact the main operator, which is it can be an accident. But there we have an email intercept feature where all emails blasted to all investors in that deal get stopped to the corresponding co-GP to review the email.
Right. Well, you know what? Usually we stop at 1. Do you have another couple minutes to answer some more questions?
Yeah, we'll do.
Yeah.
We'll just go through all the questions. Yeah.
Great. Let's see. So I'll try to hit on the highlights. Does Cashflow Portal offer the option to list deals for investors to see or choose from? Not really.
Yes. So it's not Cashflow Portal. We created a company. It's called Palace Investing. I'll put the site. Actually, the name of the site is called Palace, but the URL is palaceinvesting.com. It's Dallas with a P and then investing. And the reason we do this is we're not promoting deals. And I want to put that line in the stand. Our goal is not to raise capital. Our solution to this, or the reason why we created this another company, is because we have the catalog of GPs and deals, right? And we've come across investors who say like, hey, I want to do this alternative investment. I don't want my money in crypto or in stocks anymore. However, I don't know anyone in my circles who's doing any alternative investment, right? So that you need the operator first before you can see the offerings. So we thought like, hey, we already have their profiles. Why not just give them this avenue for these investors to reach out to them? So we created another site, which is Palace Investing. So now investors can vet the GPs, reach out to them. If it's a 506c, they can see live deals that are being raised. So yeah, the long-winded answer is yes, we do. And the caveat is obviously the deals there are hosted in Cashflow Portal, and that's the only way it can be shown to Palace. But at the end of the day, our goal is not to market. Our goal for that is like a LinkedIn, which is a high touch level for investors to reach out and find operators that they can invest with.
That's fantastic because we constantly get people or asking us, how can we go about meeting people that are doing this? And, certainly going to live events, but now, here's another online way that you can start to do that as well. That's great.
And that, how did you spell that, Adrian? P.
Wait, I put in the, I'll just put in the chat if that's okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, great. Thank you.
Just make sure to everyone.
Yes.
All right. So Corey asked, many banks require personal guarantees for loans. Do investors and syndications typically offer personal guarantees along with the investment? And I can answer that one. So typically they're going to be looking at that asset management entity that we're creating. And when I was talking about the syndication structure earlier, they're going to look at the people within that asset management entity to be the ones that guarantee the loans. And so we even can go further and structure that in a way. So let's say there's 5 members of the asset management entity, and only 2 of them are going to sign on the loan. Then we will create that as a manager managed LLC. And the 2 that are signing on the loan are the managers. And then the bank only cares about them. They don't care about the percentage ownerships of the other people in the asset management entity. If it's a member managed LLC, that asset management entity, then they're going to want to underwrite everybody who has usually over 20% of the interest, but it depends what kind of loan you're getting. If it is not that it's personal guarantees, it's even on non-recourse loans, you're still required to provide loan guarantors with net worth equal to or greater than the loan amount.
Mm.
And so it can be a combination of people. It doesn't have to be one person. It can be up to 4 people usually. So those are the people that we want to put into that position where the lender's only looking at them, not really concerned about what the percentage interests are. But within your syndicate itself, the lender will have some criteria. And depending if it's a CMBS loan, a Fannie Mae loan, or a Freddie Mac loan, it could be anywhere from 10 to 25% of the total ownership interest in your company is the number that they're looking at. So when you do your capital stack and you add up who the investors are and what percentage interest they own, and then you look at what is that in a total, as far as their percentage of the total ownership of the company, that's the number that the lenders are looking at. Happy to discuss that later. If you want to schedule a call with us, and anybody that does want to schedule a call with us, just go to our website, syndicationattorneys.com. There's pages, there's buttons there where you can schedule a call, and you can either do discovery call or even schedule a paid consult with one of the attorneys. Excellent. All right. What else do we have?
Oh, I don't know why that's doing that.
I think that's about it, unless we've got anybody in the chat. I think we've covered somebody, Phil says, I took many classes at Learning Annex, laugh out loud.
Yeah.
Oh, great. So, all right. Well, I think we've covered most of the questions. I think we've covered a lot. Adrian, just give your contact info again.
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat to reach out to me. Adrian.
And or you can go to our website, syndicationattorneys.com, and read about vendors. They're there. And we're huge advocates of Cashflow Portal. We've interviewed Perry before. We've interviewed Adrian now. We've met them multiple times at events, and we love what they do. Our clients love what they do. I'm actually invested in a deal that's on Cashflow Portal. So, things, but that doesn't mean I want to invest in your deal. Don't y'all ask me to invest.
They know Kim is credited.
Nice.
Oh, great. Thank you
you.
guys.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Adrian. Thank you, Kim.
And we're going to be doing podcasts every week for a while because we're trying to get enough of our Beyond Multifamily segments done that we can create a book out of it and have it ready for our upcoming event. And we will be making sure that all of you know about that as well when it happens. So thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you all. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for all your great questions.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.